drunk and screaming, but the only somewhat sane person there was Milo. He ran up to her and screamed at Martin, but Martin had said, "I didn't do anything, man. Her hand is stuck to that thing like it's her baby." Phoebe replied with a groan, "It's not his fault, Miles. I just think I got some glue on my hand and now it's stuck." Milo looked around left, right, and then pointed to himself. "We've been working 3 or 4 years together, Phoebe, and you think my name is Miles? People don't even know the color of my eyes, for God's sake." A woman across the room stood up and yelled, "It's green!" One of her friends stood up and told her to sit back down because it was green. It wasn't green. It was blue, obviously. Phoebe looked confused now. "What does the color of your eyes have to do with everything? My hand is bleeding the color of blood." Milo nodded his head and then took her hands and waved goodbye to everyone in that living room, and before closing the door behind him and Phoebe, said he was a trained professional, although that was a lie, and he actually just volunteered at the hospital every now and then. The only reason he left with her that night was to help someone and prove to himself that he really could be the first person to not go to medical school. But what he didn't realize is how it looked like to everyone else. It looked like he liked her. And then the door closed and everyone stared at Phoebe and Milo's empty seats, and one person looked at the stain on the carpet. Within 10 minutes, everyone except that one coworker that was hosting the party left. Most of them were very fond of Milo and was the only reason they had gone to the party. On the drive to the hospital, after Phoebe realized eventually he was in fact lying about being a professional, she demanded to be taken to a hospital. But suddenly she felt groggy and put her head against the seat, closing her eyes slowly. Fatigue was taking her under. "Oh no, don't you sleep on me. I've still got some questions for you, Bee." Phoebe blinked her eyes open abruptly as Milo spoke. "Why do you call me Bee? We're not even that close, and my name is Phoebe." "Yeah, I know what your name is. I give everyone a nickname." He looked straight ahead as he said this, rushing past cars. "And I don't like P, so B sounds better. It's the second part of your name anyway. And, well, call me B some other time," she said. "This is our first time talking, and it's weird." Milo snapped over at her with a moment with his mouth agape. "That's not true. We've talked many times before." He looked back at the road and swerved a little bit. "There was that one time I gave you your stapler back, the time at the water jug." Phoebe scoffed. "That was my sister at one of the office parties." Milo felt very guilty all of a sudden, like that deep in the stomach guilty. "I'm sorry we'd never talked before then. You would have known my name," he said softly. Phoebe rolled her eyes and replied under her breath, "Just hurry and take me to a real professional." She closed her eyes, but Milo looked over at her and snapped his fingers in front of her face. She fluttered her eyes open. "Look, I may not be a professional, but I do know you can't fall asleep when you're bleeding because you might fall into a coma." Phoebe opened her mouth to say something snappy, but then closed it because she realized he was right. For the rest of the ride, she tried to figure out a comeback to say. At the hospital, in the waiting room, Phoebe tried everything in her will to stay awake. She had put pressure on her hand during the car ride, but pretty soon, the Taco Bell napkins in the compartment holder ran out and she had to turn to receipts to soak up the blood. Milo apologized every now and then about it and promised to ask for extra napkins the next time he was in the drive-thru. But she was so tired and couldn't help but rest her eyes the second before she was called to see the doctor and rested her head on Milo's shoulder. A warm feeling from his heart down to his toes spread through him. No one had ever rested their head on his shoulder before. And at that last moment before she was called in to see the doctor, he whispered into her hair, "I like you, Bee. Bee's just for you, all right." Later that night, when that one coworker that hosted the party went over to give Phoebe the carpet after hours of trying to wash it out with no success, she tried to give it straight to her, but Milo stopped her before she walked into the hospital room. "Here," that one coworker said, "it's for her and that corkscrews of hers." And then they left. As they turned on their heels, stomping down the hallway, Milo realized he didn't know their name. He smiled and then looked at Phoebe through the window on the door and felt something in his chest, in his heart. Thank you.
Wow. All right. Fantastic. Thank you so much. And we're so proud that you've made your North American debut with us. We know that you've read at HSPVA before that. So, qué gusto que puedes estrenar tus obras con nosotros. So, thank you very much. And it is in keeping with the evening. We want to introduce our main speaker here, Dagoberto Gilb. And round of applause for Dagoberto Gilb. He is a national treasure. Says so on the cover of the book. Hector Tobar said it. But Nuestra Palabra is a Houston cultural treasure, so we can recognize other treasures. So you're definitely a treasure. I don't want to read the blurb or the bio from the back of the book. People can Google you People have PhDs in Dagoberto Gilb studies. What I want to add before I hand them the mic is that I know for a fact that Dagoberto Gilb has given up several books that he could have written to help others. And I'll just give two quick examples. He was the founder of Huizache magazine. That's a lot of hard work. That then gave the opportunity for so many visual artists, as poets, writers, to get their work published. Another major anthology, which we have out here outside, is Hecho en Tejas, the anthology of Texas Mexican literature. Again, he used his connections to get that published, to bring these other voices. That's what a mentor does. Today we're celebrating his books. There'd be more of those if he had not given to others. And at the end of the day, how many leading figures in their art field still give back to the community? So he's coming back home to Houston. Please welcome El Mero Mero, Dagoberto Gilb.
I don't remember what I'm supposed to say. What are we leading to? To the reading? I forget the order. El Mero Dago.
El Mero Dago.
What do you want?
Well, let me ask you something.
Yeah.
We are at a different chapter, though, of your career, too. So maybe we can explain a little bit about how this reading is going to be a little different.
Oh, okay.
Than readings of the past.
Got you. Okay. Yeah, like why are we sitting here? And why am I not going to read my stuff? It's because it is a new phase of my life. And it's kind of been I won't say it's wonderful that I became disabled. But like 12 years ago, I became disabled. I will call it a brain injury. Other people would call it something else. But I have to tell you, one of the things I learned that I didn't know, because I guess you could say I grew up like a boy, like a jerk, and I didn't know people were nice. I grew up in a tough, dysfunctional home. My mother barely was nice to me, and my father wasn't there. So it was, my mother and whoever she was dating. So who I didn't like. So once I had this thing happen to my body, I learned that people were kind. I had no idea that people were kind. People would walk up to me and, in the hospital, this is where I began to notice. And I'd be in the chair and they'd say, "Do you need help?" And like, "What are you talking about, dude?" I mean, my brain was not accepting that's possible. But, time went on, and in grocery stores, I learned that people could be kind. I didn't know that existed. It really transformed my life. I mean, obviously there was another part that was transforming too, the fact that I hobble around, and sometimes you'll notice when I talk to you that I slur a word. There's certain words that my body won't let me say anymore. There's certain words my body should not let me say, but that doesn't stop my body from saying them. Anyway, and so one of the things that's going to happen is that I can't do certain things very well. And so I kind of like the idea of, I had Irene come here to read as me my work, which I actually think should be a trend, because we writers, we write, but maybe good readers. Irene is an incredible reader. Now, should I talk about her and introduce her to the reading?
Talk about her. Don't want to play a video about her.
Not really.
I should talk about her, or I should shut up?
Is she cool?
Oh, is she cool? Come on. Let me tell you why I like Irene. I mean, there's lots of things I like about her. Years past, people asked me to help them, have a Guggenheim, and she'd ask me that. And I think of all the people that epitomize what I believe in lit, and it might sound a little odd, but she didn't come up with parents that are middle class, knew nothing of the literary business. And it's true, it's kind of my own identity. I had none of that. Didn't go up into college studying poetry and literature. It's all her. It all came from her. Nobody in the nobody encouraged her in her home to go to college and study this and do that in poetry of all things. And then what does she do? She has a job. I mean, who has a job anymore? I mean, for wages. You go to college. I put myself through college. She put herself through college. I just like that. I don't dislike people that didn't. I just like the ones that do. I know what she went through. I know about having a job, needing a job to go to school. So then the next thing I'll say is about her work. It's gorgeous. It's truly, but people don't see, they see this man. And, you know, when I started thinking, I came to writing late. I love to read, mostly fiction, but I learned about, you know, probably from the beat era, not my own era, but reading beat poetry. And it opened up poetry to me. Oh, I like poetry because it was voice oriented and it wasn't about, it was what the beats were rebelling against. The beat era rebelled against the college era. Allen Ginsberg's father was a poetry professor, and he rebelled against him, saying, I don't like I don't like verses. I want free verse. I want free voice. I want to be wild. I want to howl. And I kind of liked all that. That was fun. I thought, well, okay, if poetry is fun, I like poetry. Irene has two books that I think, the first that I saw of hers, that I think this is one of our great writers, was the Blood Sugar Cantos. What's it about? It's about diabetes. But it's, of course, not about diabetes alone, but it's about that. That is our culture. You go to Mexico, you go in the poor cultures, it's a plague. Diabetes is a plague. She's writing about a plague. And then she has a book last year that I could not believe major publishers weren't screaming to publish and to have. It's also, she wouldn't bother them. I'm sure of that. She didn't send to them and tell her, I'm really a good poet. And look at this, read this one poem, and I'll send you something. But she has all her friends because everybody loves her. And she gets this published, and you know, I get to read it and go, my God, this is the best book of poetry I've read in a decade. And it's called The Eaters of Flowers. It is a long, long lament over the loss of her brother. Very sad, and all, you know, lots of things come from those places in our time in life, and absolutely an exquisite poetry read. And then when you know her, really, you know, excuse me, joy. She's nothing but joy. She's fun. She laughs. She hollers. I love it. We were at the Texas Book Festival, and she's the one telling you, hawking the booth. It's just her. So I'm just so grateful I asked her to read for me. I do also like that, you know, I write from a male point of view, and that's because, I mean, should I write from a female point of view? Do I know anything about that? Actually, I do, but I am, you know, that's not what lit is. Lit is about, I like to read women because I am not a woman. I want to read a woman. I don't want to read a guy thinking like, oh, I'm going to pretend I'm a woman. But anyway, she's great, and I'm very proud that she's going to read my fiction to you guys. I actually think it should be a trend that other people read your work, because I think almost everybody does better than me reading me. But anyway, and I'm grateful.
Great homage. That's awesome.
Yeah. You are.
But not yet. Not yet. So one thing is, one, what a great testament to your work, but also to your legacy. of promoting others. And we want you to share that. So with the new Nuestra Palabra, we don't just do pop-ups like we used to do. Dagoberto mentioned we were just at the Texas Book Festival. We had Dagoberto at our booth. Some of you got to hear Jessica Hoppy read last week. We took her to the San Antonio Latino Bookstore at the Guadalupe Cultural Arts Center. We took her to the Texas Book Festival where she did some panels and read at our booth. Irene was also, she did some panels. She was at our booth. Irene has been one of our featured authors of the week on our website. So we want to play one of those videos so that, exactly like you're saying, we have to promote each other. And one way to do that is to spread the word. Another way is to buy the books. And her book is so powerful, it's probably going to wind up getting banned. Okay, that's how good it is. That's how good it is. So what we have to do and what we want to help you to do is to start your family libraries or restock them. In 2012, when we started the Libro Traficante Caravan, we started underground libraries. We didn't know we were predicting that we'd need them again. We need them again. And you need to stock them or start them. And one way to do that is if you go to nuestrapalabra.org, some folks don't speak Spanish and get a little lost. So we have also the domain houstonreads.org. You can direct them to that. It'll get to this as well. We want to show you every week we have a author of the week and visual artist of the week. So I want to show you one of the videos that features Irene so that you can text your friends and send it to them. And then they can go to our website and they can purchase that book, signed copies. And every purchase continues our movement where you're helping a Latino writer, Latino publisher, and you're helping us give back to the community. So right now I'm going to ask the booth then to play the next video. And this is our new look, and this is the new NP show. If you want to roll it, please. Professor Tony Diaz, El Libro Traficante. This is Nuestra Palabra, Latinos having their say. Our poet of the week is Texas Poet Laureate Irene Lara Silva with her book, The Eaters of Flowers. And right now we want to tell people all about the insides of the book, the guts, el corazón, because we definitely want them to take advantage of this chance to get a signed copy, to learn more about you. And we want them to understand why this would form a wonderful part of their family library, community library, or underground library.
So I would say this is probably, of all of the books I've written, the one that the writing process was the most intense. I wrote the entire thing in a 2-month stretch and finished it right at the 6-month anniversary of my youngest brother's passing. He was 40 years old, diabetic amputee, and I'd been his only caregiver for 19 years, especially the last 12 before he passed. Extreme limited mobility, a lot of pain. And I was his only caregiver. We were otherwise estranged from family. Our parents were already gone. And so when he died, I was very lost. I was really the only way to explain it to people is that I had based my life and my schedule so much around his care that when he passed, I really did not know when to eat or sleep. Mm. And so those first 6 months were not just grieving, but it was also trying to figure out my life and thinking about mortality, thinking about what I wanted to concentrate on. And one of the things that really surprised me is that for a while, I thought the main topic of the book was grief. And I think I've only recently realized that it's also deeply about gratitude, because I did get to have him in my life, because I was there to take care of him, because he passed away very peacefully, and because I now have beautiful, beautiful memories. He was also an incredibly artistic person and my best reader and my best editor. And so after all of those years, even though he's gone, that the impact of his influence is still pretty much in every line I write. And I still hear what his advice would be in my head. And he was always the one who would push me further and further and to get really deep and really, really enter the space to create from and to be really honest. And that's a hard thing because we tend to value polish and style more than we value honesty. And so for me, that's what this book is. It's to be very honest about grief and about loss and about gratitude and mortality and what really matters in life.
And that's so powerful because that is conveyed. At the same time, you still had to think about structure, how many poems, which comes next. There's drawings, there's a wonderful painting on the cover.
Yes.
Tell folks a little about those very quotidian aspects and how you balanced just the sheer emotion. And I imagine that Act Two helped you come to terms with the loss.
Very much so. I mean, you find, okay, so I found myself, I don't know, but I found myself repeating myself to friends as I was trying to figure these thoughts out. And I finally realized, well, I can either continue to make my friends crazy by telling them the same thing again, or I can shape this and refine this and concentrate it into the form of a poem. And for me, that's always what poetry has been. I go, since I'm writing in different genres, but I go to poetry when I'm trying to figure things out that are important in my life, especially in my personal life and in my emotions. That's what poetry is for, as far as I'm concerned. So it made sense to try to take those very intense emotions, that intense experience of grieving, and to shape it into poetry. Because so much of it is about what does the vessel look like? What is the form of it? How is this going to play? And at this point, I mean, this is my fifth collection of poetry. There's also something that happens when you go from writing poems individually to, I don't know, somewhere around the third book, it became evident to me that I'm writing books. Like, yes, I'm writing individual poems, but I already know that it's going to go into a shape that's going to be a book. And so for me, it felt very natural. I'm like, all of these are going to fit in this space, and this is how they're going to fit. And then you leave a lot of room to see what happens, as you're going through. And so that happened. One of the big things, though, was the cover image. The cover image is a painting by Octavio Quintanilla called Puño de Flores. And he posted that image on Facebook about probably 2 weeks after I even thought of writing this book. And the title had come to me. And I saw the image and I thought, that is the image that I can focus on while I'm working on these poems. A lot of my books have my brother's artwork on them. And it really seemed impossible to me to write a book about losing him and then to use his art. I wasn't going to be able to. So I needed a step away. But I also needed a visual focal point. And that's what this work provided for me. And Octavio kindly said I could use it for the cover. And then there's one poem in the book that is also referring to that cover.
That's beautiful because then it all comes together full circle. It shows part of that healing, and it really is a wonderful legacy to your brother, to your own work, and to the visual artist Octavio Quintanilla, who's a dear friend of ours as well. So thank you so much, and we hope that folks will take advantage of this and make the Eaters of Flowers part of their family library and come back to nuestrapalabra.org to find out more. So thank you so much.
Yes.
I want to thank Rodrigo Bravo, our producer. The Whole New Look, Lizbeth Atencio is our brand strategist. She's the founder of Monday Paper. And then you saw Clarissa Zubio on the way in, who is our operations manager. But what we want you to know is that not only are we dealing with writers in person, but then even this will be videoed and shown later just to keep the word going. So without further ado, reading an excerpt from Dagoberto's book, New Testament Stories, Irene Lara Silva. Yes.
No. It says that it's on. Do y'all hear me? Do you hear me?
Yes, but maybe if you bring it a little closer. Hold it like right there.
Right here? Okay, here we go. Now I can hear it. So one thing I wanted to say, so I've loved Dagoberto's work since 1995. I had left college and I was waitressing at Olive Garden, and I read Magic of Blood. And then I moved to Austin in 98, and I think I first heard you read in 2001 at the Continental Club. And so I followed Dagoberto's work for a really long time. Dagoberto, I think last year, maybe the year before, gave me one of the best compliments I've ever gotten as a writer. I don't know if you remember this, but you said that that you could tell that I was a fighter because of my writing. And I I think I was telling somebody recently, I think that's why I love The Passing West, the new collection of essays. All through it, it's just puro peleonero. Like you just, and we need that. We need that so much. I am working on an anthology called Ispatli, which is prose as medicine. And I really wanted Dagoberto's story, the one I'm going to read from tonight, to be in it. Because I think we have these really new agey, superficial ideas of what medicine is. And I think being a peleonero can be a way of being medicine in the world. Being cabezudo, being corajudo, being difficult, I think is a way of being medicine in the world because we need that disruption. We need to not give up. For some of us, it looks a little different. For some of us, gotta go patateando through life, kicking everybody. Like that's what we do. So I thought that was a huge compliment. Muchísimas gracias. And for me, I think it's one of the reasons that I've always looked to your work because there is this stubborn root of endurance in it that I don't see in a lot of people's work. Wow, thank you. And yes, and that's why I wanted the story because some people were sending me stuff and I'm like, I'm not doing the anthology Chicken Soup for the Latino Soul. I want medicine. So for any of you that are writers, I'm looking for pieces for my anthology called Ispati. So I'm very happy to read from this collection, and I'm glad that I got to see the collection before it was published. This is the first story in the collection, and I'm going to read until either my clock says something or until Tony or Dagoberto stop me. I think that's what we decided. All right. So this is Gray Cloud on San Jacinto Plaza. Here we go, find the right light. I was 9 or 10. My sister Lily was around 6 and my sister Rosie 5. And I do remember clearly that they were both wearing matching pink dresses and 2 shiny black shoes Mom bought at Fox Plaza, an old mall nobody went to near La Jeff, where she always said on sábados they had the best pulga with the best finds. They wore new white socks too. They had matching colas that I think were tied by ribbons, but could be other little girl thingies. They were happy all the time, except when they got in a whose was whose fight. Mostly they got along with each other great, and that day I say they were especially happy. I don't know why I don't remember anything my mom ever wore. Yes, I am certain it wasn't the same cada dia. She washed all ours a lot, and there had to be her clothes in the piles too. My dad wore jeans and a short sleeve shirt every day, and this day was like any. For work, it was usually a t-shirt, but he also liked cotton ones with buttons, colored stripes or squares, no tails, untucked. He was wearing one of those that day. He had nice boots and work boots. He was a rock mason. But this day, I say it was sneakers. Me, I don't remember. I had clothes on though. It wasn't a Sunday. We didn't always go to Mass, but Mom told me we were good Catholics, and I took her word for it, especially on the good part. All 3 of us kids were baptized at Guadalupe Church on Alabama. Mom and Dad did get married in the church. Black and white photographic evidence, my dad in a dark suit, and my mom, all pretty, in a white dress with a veil. But I never wondered or asked where or who was there. I say that day in 77 or 78 was a Saturday. My parents said it might have been a weekday because sometimes my dad went on unemployment back then. It was a happy day though, because I remember well how my sisters were. And to me, I'm always me, but I was not unhappy for sure. We were at the edge of San Jacinto Plaza, at the northwest corner to be exact. That I remember exactly. San Jacinto was where most of the downtown city buses came and went. I especially loved them when I was younger. I also liked the Plaza Fountain because they said there used to be alligators in it, and there was a chance they were going to put them back in there again. Pretty thrilling past and future to me. Though I don't remember how we got there or how we got home, it wasn't by bus. None of us has any memory of why we were there right then, or of any practical thing we did right after, like going home. That day, that Saturday or whatever, began what was like another time frame. The gray cloud came silently, or it sucked all sound into its quiet, or made a detour, turn off. Not a bird chirp, a tire squeal, a bus engine blast, a baby whimper, a dog yap, not a footstep. It wasn't hotter or colder. It didn't seem to be driven by any wind. It came toward us from where it could be Texas or Mexico or New Mexico, from that desert. The closer it got, the more it seemed we were moving toward it. From a distance, while it approached, it looked like a huge ball, but it was just gray air or gas or dust, a cloud that blocked seeing anything in it or beyond it. Once we were all caught inside it, I felt like I had no breath, or it was just that I was holding my breath. I couldn't see my mom or dad or sisters or anyone. I still think Dad must have said, "No se muevan." But I could have imagined that, or even heard someone else say it. But I didn't move, as the voice I heard, or didn't really, warned me. I don't know how long this lasted. It couldn't have been many minutes. It had to be a lot of seconds because I couldn't hold my breath long enough. I remember trying not to breathe deep when I had to, and then it was over. Like a light switch turned on, an off-on blink. We were at the northwest corner of the San Jacinto Plaza, exactly, where the buses never stopped, but had. There was color again, red and blue, yellow and green, startling, like they'd been cleaned. My sisters were still in their pink dresses holding Mom. I cannot remember if they were sobbing or not. I think that's something that matters, but the truth is, I just don't remember. My dad later pronounced that it was from Asarco, the copper smelter that was in the direction of where the gray cloud came from, to the plaza and us. To me, Asarco was a giant red pipe stuck in the ground in the desert. My dad was told there was an article in the newspaper. I didn't know then that he didn't read. I mean, I never saw him read anything ever, and I never thought to ask if he didn't or couldn't. Though my mom liked celebrity gossip magazines in English and Spanish, we didn't get the morning or afternoon paper. Some more days later, my tia gave my mom a section of a paper that had a small box about the gray cloud that passed through the center of the city. I was excited to see it because it was something from my life that made it into a newspaper. There wasn't much. A very small box that could fit in a wallet and one of the folded sides. It said nobody knew what it was, and there was no reports of harm done. And Asarco said it wasn't anything caused by them. It didn't matter what the newspaper said. It was a big deal in our house. We talked about it a lot. What it was like coming, what it was like inside it, what it was like after, what damage it could or might do was in our rooms a long while. Any cough or upset stomach could be because of it, bad sleep, a bad poop. My pops finally didn't like my mom bringing it up all the time after a while, but he couldn't stop her. Not that he tried very hard. He didn't. More like, ya con eso. But not loud, not demanding, no exclamation marks. He didn't say anything to me or us or out loud anyway, but I saw him listening whenever it came up, and I heard her get softer, shorter about it. He got that from her. She went on less for him. Me, I felt pretty much the same about it. Bad or nothing but done. Yeah, it happened. I'm here, whatever. My sisters seemed the most affected. They'd get to babbling, like, "Mommy, do you think anything might make her hair gray, like Abuelitas, but too early, like before we get to middle school? That happened to a boy at Crockett where I was going, like them." The boy had nothing to do with the gray cloud, except his hair change was some months after it, and so maybe. The cana grew on the side of his head. Or like, was the reason why the zancudos didn't bite them like they did all over to their best friend Julie next door, was that because of the cloud? It went like this in our house for many, many months, probably because of my mom. She dwelled on it the most, I think, or it seemed like it. Because even me, who I'd say didn't, kind of did. Maybe because of my mom, but I can't say for sure. It wasn't talked about the same way after a while, but it was there without words, without having to bring it up. It was always at the front of my mom's mind. We each heard it in her, saw it in moments that were supposed to be normal and usual, and would have been if she wasn't, I don't know, un poco loca. We worried. One day in the bathroom, I came out of the shower. I was beginning to dry myself off. Outside the window was what I always saw, a blue sky over everything, so close it shouldn't be called sky above, while below, where on the TV shows all of us in El Paso watched, was supposed to be green lawn, shady trees, bushy hedges, delicate flowers, was the dry brown dirt where we lived. The neighbors across the street, that was asphalt like any TV street, lived just like us, except here and there, they might have patches of grass barely growing or dying out, waiting on desert rain. My mom kept our yard free of stray grass and weeds. We had some cactuses and sage, a few house in the front and visible side that didn't take any watering usually. Our only hose was in the backyard, where the almond tree still dropped nuts, grass beneath its shade and sharing its water. But this morning, my mom, a bucket of water beside her, was soaking a patch in the center of our bare front yard. She took a shovel and began digging a widening hole. I thought it had to be a grave, a burial site for a dog or a cat, both which often found meals or water near our back door left by my mom. But the middle of the front yard? Instead, it was for a strange looking plant, the leaves thick, dull, oval shaped and long, that she dragged down the front steps. Big, as plants go, it was not a baby tree. Still, not what went in the center of a yard that was all dirt, or even a grass one. The dusty earth, wet now, did look a richer brown. Like me at the bathroom window, my dad silently watched her from the side of his truck. He was changing the oil. Like me, I could tell he thought it was a little off too. I was there at the window so long I dried without a towel. When my pops and I were in the living room, and my mom too, he let me know to be careful about what I might say. What she told us was that it was called a flor de cielo. A señora at the YWCA, where they had a bake sale once a month, gave it to her. It was very healthy, she claimed, for all of us, for our home. One night, some more months later, even a year, at maybe 3 a.m., those hours for sleep, I'd been having a long dream I couldn't shake. I was with some people I didn't recognize, but who I kept thinking I did, and I was supposed to drive. I didn't drive when I wasn't dreaming, even if I pretended to in my dad's truck. I was scared of getting in trouble and maybe dying in a bad wreck or killing someone else. So I forced myself awake. I must have made a noise. My mom had come. While I was dreaming, she was there. She wanted to know if I was okay. She was carrying a glass of water. I was thirsty and it really tasted especially good. Of course I was okay, I assured her. It was a dumb dream. I didn't like the dream. It had nothing to do with that gray cloud, which to her, and I remember saying to her, or only to myself, Mom, it wasn't the gray cloud. But she wouldn't have believed me. But she wouldn't have said she didn't believe me. I was happy she was there, happy for the water, but as good as all that was, the gray cloud happened and it lived with us. I woke up happy I had my mom. I had some friends who didn't, or some who didn't really. Hard for me to believe too, that gray cloud, was all the time really. Years and years. I mean, since that day, holy or unholy, both or neither, never ending. A little this and not so small that.
That was great. This is a very cool new tradition. I do want to mention there are 2 books. That was from New Testament Stories and A Passing West, Essays from the Borderlands. These are the nonfiction essays. We chatted before. We'll be airing that interview in a few weeks, where I call this the sort of the breakdown of that fictional approach. And before we chat a little bit about the book and then let you meet Dagoberto personally, I do want to point out, kind of in keeping with the disability you mentioned, you don't sign your books. We have this special stamp and you put your mark on it. So some of the books are already signed, but you will get a chance to take a picture with him. And these are very then powerful parts of your new underground library. But I want to say one thing about A Passing West. So right now we're going to talk about the brilliant Chicano visual artist Cesar Martinez. He's actually created the graphics that are in this book. Dagoberto mentioned in the interview, it's the second time he worked on the graphics. He is collected throughout the country. So his work is collected at the Museum of Fine Arts Houston, the Cheech in Riverside, California, also the Museum of Modern Art. I want to go to the next screen because you're going to hear a little bit about his work, which is the Pachuca series. And to me, it is very telling that he's getting attention now, but he's always been about the community. And it's powerful to me that he's working with Dagoberto and he's working with us to create a print. You'll notice some of these images from his other work. You've got everything from Bato con sunglasses, Guadalupe G, La Parrot, and he brings that sort of sensibility as well as other styles as well. And I want to show the next slide, which is Dagoberto said, well, let's team up. And I got a chance, Dagoberto set it up. I got a chance to meet with Cesar at his studio. Well, of course, first thing he said is, how are the Librotraficantes doing? He said, we want to keep smuggling books if we have to. But he was so kind because I want to show you how he's helping us. So he created a special edition print based on the graphics. We're unveiling it today. Really, really beautiful. Really a blessing to have two Chicano icons, two American legends working with us closely. And this particular print is specifically for Nuestra Palabra. We've got 100 limited print run. These are $200 each. They're exclusively numbered. I should say Dagoberto took number 2. So, and then, let's see. I bought number 1. And then Brian Paras and John Paras bought 3 and 4. So if you start now, you can get number 5. I will tell you this, that number 90 through 100 will be auctioned off when we get there. And the proceeds go to help Nuestra Palabra. Typically, when we work with the artist, 50% go back to the visual artist, but he donated it back to us. So we do want to also thank sponsors right now. Want to thank Mecca for donating the space today. So round of applause to Mecca and a legend, Alice Valdez, the whole team helping us out today. The new director, Armando, who is one of her proteges. Speaking of proteges, we also want to thank the BIPOC Arts Network and Fund. They're the ones that named Nuestra Palabra a Houston Cultural Treasure, which came with 2 years of funding. And we've used that first year to create this infrastructure. Second year, we really want to accelerate it. I want to thank the Brown Foundation for sponsoring our global reading series, for making this possible. We haven't had a reading series since the COVID-19 shutdown, so we're very happy to be able to do that, as well as put it in multimedia. We also want to thank the law office of Carolina Ortuzar Diaz, PLLC. She's an immigration expert, but she helps us too with our operating costs. And just in keeping with creating other artists, I do want to show you just one of the other prints. So what we do is we team up with different visual artists to create different prints. And this is by Monica Villarreal. She is a graphic artist, also a danzante. She created this piece, Labels, which is very powerful. And it talks about a lot of the names that have been used to try and quantify her. The message, though, is that we define ourselves. That's the power of art. And this accompanied the Latino Poetry Anthology from the Library of America, which we helped them get a grant to create. We've got copies of that as well. And at least about 5 of the poets in there are poets who no one else believed in. And we're so glad we worked with them before the rest of the world knew about them. And now the rest of the world is catching up because they're published as well. The typical prints, we want to really make them affordable. They're typically $50. If they're framed, they're $100. But our goal then is that perhaps a teacher in a high school, yes, you can see how this is fine art, but sometimes our community is intimidated by the book, intimidated by the scholar. So this is one way where even teachers or community members can start the conversation going with their family members or students, because this they can take in, talking about it, and then we introduce them to the poetry work. So on that note, I do want to, and again, if you go to the website, you can see all of these works, signed copies, and there'll be more works every week, all of whom are writers that we've worked with. But I do want to know, let's talk about the book, Irene, because even that short story, Dagoberto Gilb has changed the way we will be thought about and talked about. In the collection of essays, he talks about what you all know, how we are omitted under our very eyes from everything, including the definition of our own Texas state literature, which is a powerful, powerful piece and insights. But just for that short story, the one that you picked, I picked the second one in there to read later on our show. But there's an entire book, White Noise, where it's almost the same topic, white noise, except for the Anglo world, it would be that book. And for us, sufremos, nos morimos, algo pasó mal, and we're not in the mitote. Why did you pick that piece, Eden?
I picked that piece because, going back to this idea of how we endure and how we survive and what we think, the stories that we build around our lives. And that kind of has, how do you take in a story of environmental pollution, of poverty, of exposure, to the way that it affects your entire life? And yet it doesn't lead to apathy or giving up. You endure. And there's something that I thought was incredibly powerful about that. And, and going back to one of the reasons that Dagoberto's work has been so influential is that because of the fact that you do have a lot of writers coming either from privileged backgrounds or from MFAs or being taught that only certain stories can be told, you end up not seeing the stories of the working class, seeing stories of people who are on the border, seeing the stories of people who, just have to work to live. These aren't stories we see, and that's why we need them.
Of course, we shouldn't pretend he's not here. So do we get an A, Professor? I don't know. What grades do we get?
I like you pretending I'm not here. I get to listen. I agree with both. But for me, it's also a story of a real Mexican-American family living in El Paso. And it's not what they, outside El Paso, outside the community, how they think. I had a very close friend, in fact, I'll say her name, Annie Proulx, the writer, Pulitzer Prize, couldn't be, she's a Melville in American Lit. And she saw that and immediately hooked me up with this environmentalist writer who's, a brilliant guy, another brilliant person. And you should be doing this with this story and this with, and I'm like, nobody knew what it was. We aren't going to analyze the chemistry of the toxic cloud. Nobody knew it was a toxic cloud. It's a rumor. And to people that don't read and live in El Paso, Texas right now, they aren't going to stop everything and go to school or march. Although Sarko isn't there anymore, by the way. That is true. But the story to them, to that family, was a personal story. This thing affected our home. I don't want to tell you the whole story, but it changed their life. And the entire family went there. A little thing. The mom, she starts making corn tortillas. She no longer buys the flour tortillas that are thick and warm down the way. She decides, I'm going to start making. We need to eat better because we have to take care of ourselves from this cloud, which could have been from God. It could be fate. It could be destiny. She doesn't know. She just, it's like it does involve her religious beliefs. Well, if God is good, what was that? Or, little things come up, but that's not what she dwells on. She dwells on her family, her husband, her son, her daughters. And that's what the story is to me. That's what it's about, what all the stories are about. They're not what I call them. They out there think that we think about when we live our lives in our community, in our culture. And we don't live with their tropes of us. Their stereotypes aren't us. And their cliches of us aren't us. You know, we live in what they see as a very poor house. We live in a home, a very beautiful home. Yeah, there's no plants. We can't put a grass on but it's home. It's beautiful in a beautiful place. So that's what the entire collection is about. It's about let's forget them. Let's not deal with we didn't come from East LA. We aren't invaders. They're invaders from Kansas or wherever. I don't know where they came from, but they came from some place that somehow isn't illegal to them. And that's it. Otherwise, we've been there all along. We're still there. And this is how we are. We're not living their view of us. We have our own. And every story, thank you very much. Every story, everything we write is omitting that. You know, we all have immigrant cousins, uncles, and parents, but so do they. Somehow we talk about ours, and then we have to explain ourselves. But anyway, that's what that whole book is. And I say it's called New Testaments. And everything is sort of think about the Old Testament, which was Jewish, is a Jewish book, but it's Christian, the Old Testament. And yeah, the New Testament is about Christian. Well, this is our New Testament. No more them. We can include them in our stories, but they aren't us. Unless we marry one, and then they become us, whatever. But it isn't about what they say. And yes, we are excluded. We are not even, hell, you look at my career, and I'm a living example of that. They don't know what to do with me. They have no idea. And so I'm treated differently. A little special for a while, but what's that name really mean? Like Frida Kahlo isn't weird. She's German named, first and last. In Mexico, that's, it's pretty ordinary to not be, you may not be named Hernandez. It just may not happen. You might have a funny name like Gilb. I was telling Tony, can I say this? The guy that does, what's the name of that?
We'll edit it out, I guess.
The guy that does, what's the name of that? True Detective?
I can't remember his name. Yeah.
No, that's the name of the show, though,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
The guy that does True Detective, he had me come and read. He was teaching at University of Indiana, and he had me come and read and said, "You're my favorite writer." He was a white guy, Anglo, and it was interesting. And he's a smart young guy. He's probably in his later 30s. Oh, and this week, next, I'm there like whatever day of the week. I'm going to Hollywood. HBO wants to talk to me. He did True Detective. And apparently, I only learned this a few weeks ago. One of his main characters, I guess, I don't even know what to call him. Is he a Hispanic guy or a Latino? I'm not sure. But you can see his picture and his name like Roberto Gilb. And I'm like, oh my God, look at that. They're making my name. Anyway, so I don't know how much more time.
Do you mind one more question?
Yeah, let's give you one more question.
Okay.
Then we'll give
Yeah,
you
yeah,
a
yeah,
chance to meet
yeah,
Dago.
So one of the things that I'm about to hit 50. I've at this point become very picky about everything. I have a lot of books I don't like. And Norma Cantu has told me that instead of saying I hate the books, that I should say I am not the intended audience. And I sometimes am tempted to start writing a column called "Not the Intended Audience," because apparently I'm not the audience for a lot of things. But one of the, I think, disturbing trends that I see in Latino and Chicano literature, especially by literature that's getting widely recognized, and and this has been around for a while, but there's a couple new examples that it feels like nails on a chalkboard. This ongoing temptation that writers have to write Latinos as tragic figures. Where, I mean, I won't mention the book, but there was a book, and I was telling my friends, I'm like, the sons are sad, the fathers are sad, the daughters are sad, the spouses are sad, the gay people are sad, the straight people are sad. I was like, even the oranges were sad. Like it was, and it just went. And of course, this book won a huge award, and I'm afraid that young Latina writers are gonna think that's the only way to succeed, is if they write these super tragic stories where a Latino or Latina has no chance.
Well, to me, that's an insight. That's a good one. I see us, and I'm still of the era that the word Chicano exists. And I just say, is there a Latino border? No, it's a Mexican border. I'm talking about the Mexicans. And that's what I call it. We called each other back in the day, and we still do when we're in El Paso anyway. But, younger ones, I'm like an old guy now, but I still like the word Chicano, what it represented. And that is, in itself, that was a university. It meant you went to college. It told everybody, I went to college. I am not a Mexican. I'm a Chicano. And I'm going to fight for us. That's what it meant. Well, I see us now, they're so confused that every Cuban is a Latino. And the Latino vote is going right. Or every, Juno Diaz, hey, Juno, what is your favorite taco? When it's like, okay, Juno probably has a favorite taco, but he's Dominican. He is not. And we are like 2/3 of the population of the United States. When they're talking about Latinos, they're really talking about us. But do they ever interview us for anything? No, nothing. We do not. We are getting, when I was 20, I thought, my God, there is no literature. I can be a writer. Look at all the material that is open to me. I think of Luis Valdez. I said this one time to him, and he laughed. You are young and naive, dude. I really thought, oh no, you're just wrong. And yeah, he was a lot right. And that one's good. But one of the things I like about this, woman, gay, I'm Mr. Womanizer, supposedly. We're nothing like the stereotypes that even we push ourselves to. We are diverse in all kinds inside our community, and we really get along more than we know we do. And if we just focused on who we're really battling against instead of identities between ourselves, like, I like poetry. People don't want, oh, come on. I like women literature. Oh, yeah, right. Yeah, so I get tired of that. Like, why do I have to? Anyway, that's, to me, what we are doing even here.
Brilliant. Yeah. All right. So, hey, round of applause. Thank you so much. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to whisk Dagoberto away into the lobby so you can get your personalized copy. He can stamp it, mark it for you. You can take pictures with him. And we do invite you to go to our website. These are great Christmas gifts. We will actually have his book online very soon, signed copies, as well as the video of the interview with him. Again, I want to thank Mecca for hosting us today, the Brown Foundation for sponsoring the Global Reading Series, BIPOC Arts Network and Fund, the law offices of Carolina Ortuzea PLC, and also the Houston Arts Center, and all of you. So thank you so much. Let's chat a little bit. And last round of applause for the cultural treasure that he is, Dagoberto Gilb. Thank you.
Thank you, Tony. That's cool. Thank you very much. All right. Come on. Sign some books.